Yo, this is Steve Bloom, and you're watching Moana Nui Podcast. We'll be starting soon. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Veronica Taylor, and from myself and Ash Ketchum, I just want to say, Moana Nui, I choose you!
Aloha, everyone. Welcome to the Moana Nui Podcast. We are back after the holidays. We're so happy to have you to join us this evening with our very special guest. But before we kick everything off, for those that are new tuning in, let us introduce ourselves. I am Dana, the other half of the Moana Nui Podcast. I do a little cosplay, con staff, and event photography, event planning, voice acting, and then you also have heard me and heard about me through the Blurred Official Podcast with Karen Ashley. You see me behind the scenes, and sometimes they pop me in front of the scenes on that show. Especially when Karen, if you missed out on the episode when Karen got after Hilton and Christy, they brought me in front of the house, and everybody, y'all were saying it was like parent-teacher conference, me and Karen with the parents. And of course, I have to hand it over to my other half, my yin to my yang, the Renaissance woman of our time, the woman that it makes Blade look like a little fairy dust. She fights through the night. She takes down, the hypocrites. She corrects and elevates those that are put behind and silenced within the community. I love to hand it over to the wonderful, the beautiful Moana.
Aloha, everybody. Hau'oli makahiki ho, as we say in Hawaii. Happy New Year.
Yes.
2023. It's great to be back.
Yes.
And I'm excited for a new year. At the end of last year, it got a little hectic, and I wasn't able to come onto the show a whole bunch. So for those of you who have been missing me and being like, what the heck happened to Moana? I am here. I am still here.
Yes.
We just had to, get some things in order, but we're really excited for 2023. Dana and I have some new initiatives that we'll be talking about, maybe not this week, but a little later. Still got to get some of the planning in motion, but really excited for the changes that are going to happen on the show. All good changes.
Yes.
And for those who maybe missed one of the announcements that we did last fall, I think, is that we're now a part of the Agents of Geekdom. So if you're not yet following Agents of Geekdom, please give us a like, a follow, or subscribe. We're on YouTube, Twitch, of course, on Facebook. And the Moana Nui Podcast, as always, will continue to be on the podcast streaming platforms, and you'll still be able to find us there. So not really changing, just kind of expanding, teaming up with some folks, and broadening our reach through different avenues. So thank you, everybody who's been a part of it and continues to help us as we grow this wonderful community that we love to serve. So what do I do? I'm the host, I'm the founder, with all that said. But I am also really what I am is really a champion for BIPOC communities. And I do that by running this podcast, by writing children's books for the Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea series. And of course, the thing that started most of it all is the Wildcard Chronicles, which is our comic book series here at Burning Spirit Comics. We love the work that we do, and we thank everybody who's been a part of our community through any of those avenues, because you help us to continuously serve and lead and help our community become better, mature, serve it in so many different ways. We're really excited for all of our partners and those who continue to join us. Tonight we have a friend of mine. I can't remember how Jemarc and I met. It just seems like he's like in my world for a while. We haven't had a lot of time to catch up lately though, because we've both been very busy. But I am excited to have him on tonight to talk about his new effort, Alchemize Authenticity. It was a little bit of a word thing for me, guys. My tongue gets tied sometimes, but I'm excited to talk to him about that because, like, what does that mean? Alchemize Authenticity. What does it mean to be a spiritual geek? What does that mean to you? Like, if you were like me, like, okay, lots of big words, but like break it down to me in something simple. Somebody who's like gets caught up in all the words. But excited to have him on the show. So I'll have Dana introduce him officially, give us his wonderful bio, and then we'll dive on in to what he's doing and how he might be able to help us.
Yes. Well, of course, Jemarc, which I just brought to the front of the house, she, or they, those are Jemarc's
Order of
pronouns.
operations stays like the top preference. And
There you
then
go. Jemarc is a radical spiritual guide, meditation teacher, movement healer, transformational speaker, trained by some of the greatest in modern spiritual teachers of our era, like Deepak Chopra and the facility of Chopra Foundation. We got Benjamin Decker and much more. But he has been using they have been using their wisdom and knowledge to cultivate through the section of ancient Buddhist practices, spiritual. Now I'm getting tongue-tied. Spirituality and modern day neuroscience to help guide you towards cultivating your own healing journey. We're so happy to have Jemarc right back on the show. For those that have tuned in before, Jemarc was on here when we were talking with our group about Cos Gala last year. And of course, me being me, when I heard about their background and what they were doing, I was like, yeah, we got to have you back on the show because we got to dive into this. So, of course, first, kicking it off one, welcome back to the show, Jemarc. And of course, on the Moana Nui podcast, we like to start the show off with the Pico, or your origin story. Tell us a little bit about yourself and something special about where you are from.
oh my goodness, that's wild. That's a lot. Okay, so first, hello, my loves. I am Jemarc Axinto. Actually, my full name is Jemarc Axinto Fletcher because she's married, but that's I'm Jemarc Axinto. Nice to meet you all. I am non-binary and I am Filipino, Filipinx. And origin story is wild. So I'm a military brat. So my life was spent just ending up in a lot of different places growing up. So I'm simultaneously, a military brat, and then I'm a third culture kid. I'm the child of immigrants who came to America. And so my entire life's journey, I called myself like a master of disguise. My code switching was just next level. A really good example was my 16th birthday party. I invited all my friend groups to my 16th birthday party, and then when I was looking at when we were all eating, it was like being in the school cafeteria. Everybody was split up and not integrating, and I was like, oh, this is a really weird feeling. And hella trauma. And a lot of my coping through that trauma was through pop culture. And that was kind of just how I numbed myself and also made myself feel, but also numbed myself. So I got really into video games and anime and comic books and manga and all the things. And it was through that journey of my life that I realized that I had no idea who the F I was.
Yeah.
And the more I kept establishing my sense of self on external things, the more pain I was in. And so I would be like,
Mm.
especially when it came to like feeling like I was ever enough or feeling
Yeah.
like I was ever a good person. And so my life's journey became one of really trying to find an answer without being attached to an answer.
Okay.
Mm.
And through that came trauma healing.
Mhm.
And so the reason why I say try to find an answer without being attached to an answer is, especially in the spiritual world, you often hear the concept like kill the ego, destroy the ego, da 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 da. Da. But like we need an ego, right? We need a level of separation to interact and engage with the world. But
Yes.
a really prolific teacher named Yongyi Mingyo Rinpoche, who's been called the happiest man on earth, once described ego as an ongoing process. So instead of identifying myself as I am Jemarc, I am non-binary, I am Filipinx, I am a trauma healing coach, I am an artist, I am a writer. I'm just like I am a being and I'm just trying to figure it out. And so long as I am moving in the direction of living a life that is loving and compassionate and creative and having grace for myself and having grace for other people, then everything will work out. And it doesn't mean, I want to be so clear, it doesn't mean I don't get stressed out. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean I don't sometimes have like periods of doubt. It doesn't mean I don't get like a little bit afraid, but it does give me a little bit more freedom where I often tell people like, yeah, I'm a trauma healing coach right now. It's what I'm passionate about right now.
Mhm.
Maybe it'll be something else down the line. But by not over identifying myself with that, it gives me a little bit more freedom so that if and when I fail and make mistakes, as we are wont to do, it no longer attacks my sense of self. If I decide it's no longer what I'm passionate about, it no longer impacts my sense of self. So I was only able to get to this point through trauma healing. And I was only able to get the trauma healing through going through a bunch of shit and realizing that my entire life was gonna both metaphorically end in terms of the relationships I had built, or literally end in terms of my unwillingness to move forward. And so I had to make a change in my life. And
Yeah.
so yeah, Moana's known me since like before I started that huge transition. Like I often joke with people, like it's been so long since I've seen you. I was in the closet the last time. Like it's just like a really funny way of me tracking the passage of time. Like, oh, it's been so long, honey. I was straight when we last spoke. Like,
Well, that I love that you said that, because just as no matter where you are, if you are, on that binary spectrum or non-binary or whatever you identify as we grow, we change. And someone said, if you only recognize me as who I was when you last saw me, you
Mhm.
haven't allowed me to grow into who I am today.
Mhm.
So it's one of those that we're always changing, we're growing, because who we were as a child, we're nowhere near as an adult. And if you are still the same, you need to you need to go ahead and see a therapist. As our therapist, Shay Rains, come on here. She said, if the day of the week starts with Y, you need therapy. Uh, so it's one of those that a lot of us don't realize, between growing up and things like that. We have our own traumas that we are navigating through. And like you said, we even talked about how we have to, a lot of times there's not really quote unquote negative coping mechanism unless it becomes detrimental to you or harms you. But a lot of times we find these outlets to deal with it, to be able to just deal with life, because life, especially in the United States, is yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about growth and evolution, it's not even just from child to adult. There's a
Yes.
lot that happens in adult stages.
Hmm.
Lord knows I know. Um, whether it's the last year or a couple of years, there's just things that we are hopefully growing through, accepting, taking on challenges, overcoming them, and like J Mark was mentioning, like having grace with yourself. Like I think you have to have grace with yourself before you can truly have grace for other people.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, we are judging, evaluating, assessing the world through the our own lenses, right? And so there's truth there and there's not truth there, right? So yeah, I think that's important because I think a lot of people kind of default to like, well, yeah, I'm not who I am as a kid. Okay, yeah, but then that's like not enough, right? Like we should still constantly be revisiting ourselves and making sure that like our current existence is as healthy as it can be, and if not, asking for the help that we need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And very lovingly
Yeah.
reevaluate. It's so important. And you know, like I often tell people, and I'm not always believed. I'm like, I've engaged in very shitty and harmful behaviors. That's part
Right.
of why I knew I needed to
Mhm.
heal. And also, I was one of the first people through the gate. Like F this person to hell. I'm done with them. Cancel them. And it wasn't until I really confronted what we call in the spiritual realm like shadows, right? Well, it's only
Mhm.
until I confronted my own shadows that I was like, you know what? I could have just as easily done what that person did. And the vehemence, the rage in which I am condemning an entire person based on a set of actions was a way for me to feel better about things I was ashamed of that I wasn't confronting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. And I often find too that like there is a risk in this work of people being a little bit too complacent,
Yes.
you know. In the world that I'm in now, people are like, you say that like you understand why Ye is doing what Ye is doing, right? But you're still holding ground that like that is like, yeah, of course, because behavior is separate from being, but if behavior is still being engaged in, then that still needs to be confronted. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Ye is a very sick person, you know, and they need help, and he needs clear help. And I don't think he needs to have a platform. If he wasn't rich and famous, he'd be a person screaming on the street right now. But the former version of myself, the unhealed version, I'm still, of course, healing is an ongoing journey, but the less traumatized version, the more traumatized version of myself would have been like, Ye's a piece of shit, cancel him, I hope he dies. And that's not productive. It doesn't open the door for a world in which we all, because I didn't fundamentally believe at my core that I was capable of changing, I couldn't accept anyone else could change.
Mm.
And through my own growth and healing, I could be like, you know, anyone's capable. Will it happen in this lifetime? I don't know.
Right.
Do they have the causes and conditions possible for it to happen? Are they surrounded by people who will clock them on their shit in a way that will make an impact? I don't know. But it's never impossible for anyone. Improbable, maybe, but never
Yeah.
impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
Highly improbable sometimes,
Yeah.
but
So for
but they have to be
sure.
willing, right? You know, like the person has to be willing to do the work. And if not,
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
100%. And I that's what I do with every client I work with. I always vet them because like I need to. I don't care if they're gonna pay me like on the high end of my sliding scale. If I'm getting a read that they are not ready to do the work, I won't work with them. It
yeah.
doesn't mean they're a bad person. It's just like I'm not here to waste their time and money. And
Mm-hmm.
even though this is, you know, my career and like we live in a late capitalistic world and a bitch needs money, I'm like, yes, but I would much rather work with somebody who is paying less, who's more dedicated, than somebody who's paying more, who's phoning it in.
Yes.
Because I can't be attached to an outcome, but I can at least know if the process is beneficial for the person who I'm working with or not.
Mhm.
Very nice. Yes. And I think that's something, no matter what you're trying to navigate through, you have to be honest with yourself, because a lot of times people do things because your family, your loved ones are like, you need to get therapy, you need to do this, but you're paying out money to literally have somebody babysit you because you're not willing to do anything. You're just there to get the check marks off and say, look, y'all leave me alone. I'm doing it and keep doing it. So you have to really have that, that talk with yourself, basically, to say, hey,
Were you stalking me during my days manipulating therapists? Because I did that all the time. I knew exactly what to say to look like I had my shit together as I was falling apart.
yeah,
100%. Yeah. And it
well,
doesn't mean you shouldn't try either. Like,
exactly. Yeah,
try. Maybe you
exactly.
phone it in, but you're still taking a step further than somebody who isn't trying at all.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of people, because of, we've talked about on our show, code switching, how to code switch for the environment you're in. you can easily just say and do what needs to be done just to check it off and those the people that let you be, but you're not getting any value from it. And then as you grow up, you're finding out, yeah, I really do need to talk to somebody about this because I'm this one thing right here has been taking most of my mindset, most of my energy, and I'm just refusing to acknowledge it. And now I'm finally acknowledging it. And a lot of people think therapy is you have to be like sit down, spill all of your guts kind of aspect, but it's so many different levels to therapy that you can, like with you, being for meditation, you also had, a spiritual guide, also being like a health teacher because learning how, your body is being affected. You're helping this being this well-rounded source versus it just being a one stop kind of aspect and you're only getting this one thing from it. And with you doing all these amazing things, how does that help you work with your clients by bringing the meditation, the health teacher, the movement healer, the spiritual guide, all of that, to bring that experience to help those people navigate as they're working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first off, there's no one size fits all. So
Mhm.
some people I do off like I had a client way back who had like an eating disorder. So the food components, the Ayurvedic nutrition component, the Ayurvedic lens for consumption of food was really helpful to them, right? And then another client I've worked with in the past was like very Christian, and I'm very not, but being able to have a lens and understanding and being able to navigate a spiritual lens and apply, because I was raised Catholic, and being able to apply that lens to healing can have its benefits as well. Ultimately, I find, I really tread this line between teacher and coach with clients I work with. um Coaching, a lot of coaching, and you'll see this in therapy too, is reflection. People often just need someone to speak to who can give them permission to actually hear the words they're saying, and by reflecting that back to them. And a lot of coaching, I heard it described once that therapy is taking somebody from negative 100 to 0, and then
Mhm.
coaching is taking from somebody from 0 onward. So
Mm.
as a coach, there's a component of the perspective where I'm not looking at anyone as if they're broken. I perceive clients I work with as like they are already whole. There's a
Mhm.
metaphor used in the Vedic tradition of a white cloth, and over time the cloth gets dirtier and dirtier and dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. And it's like the cloth itself is still perfectly functional. You wash the dirt off. And we can perceive that through the lens of like a person's spirit or their soul or their innate being. It's not that there's anything wrong with you, it's that there just needs to be dirt that gets washed off. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of coaching component with my one-on-one sessions. The teaching component is where the neuroscience comes in. And that's really where I'm passionate, in that everybody in the world has trauma, bar none. Everyone has trauma. And what happens when you've dealt with compounded trauma over time is there's a system in our brain called the limbic system. It's known for housing emotional memory. It's responsible for our fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. And what happens is, functionally, it's supposed to turn on when there is an innate danger and then turn off when it's gone. So if somebody points a gun at my face, I'm either going to run from them, I'm going to fight them, I'm going to give them all my money, or I'm going to freeze in place until that situation is over by what my brain perceives. And then it turns off. My body goes from a sympathetic response, which is the heart rate goes up, the immune system gets suppressed, and like my adrenaline's running, to a parasympathetic response, which is when I finally relax. I might be breathing heavy. I'm like, okay, it's time to rest. Living with trauma is living your life as if somebody constantly has a gun pointed at your head. Because
Mhm.
at some point, your brain, your limbic system decides, oh, I need to be on all the time because something is always wrong. And through that, your brain normalizes the production of the stress chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. And so my work with clients of alchemizing authenticity, I tell them this is how you achieve who you are beyond trauma, labels, and roles. Because when we are triggered, our brain filters out everything but what it interprets as it needs to know to survive. It's why so many of us are so polarized in our belief systems. It's why we see a red hat, and this was me for a long time. I see a white person in a red cap, I'm immediately activated and want to fight them. And then like way later, I'm like, oh, it's a Boston Red Sox hat. Like, I don't know, but I'm activated, I'm triggered, and my brain has normalized that as a state of being. And so the idea of alchemizing authenticity is how do we guide your brain to normalized happy chemicals again? And I say this a lot, and it sounds very edgy, but I say it because it's something that I personally believe is really important for us to confront. Have we ever actually been sustainably content and happy? Or are we living in sporadic states of relief from our pain? It's a very different mentality. For a lot of us, it is the latter. And it was very true for me too. Because when we normalize cortisol and adrenaline, and it's not something we willfully do, we're not victim blaming here, it's just what our brains have done. It's why we can have a period of a few weeks, a few months, even a couple years where everything's going well, and then we self-sabotage. We blow it all up. It's the equivalent of a heroin addict going through withdrawal. Your brain goes, okay, this was nice, but now I need my hard drugs, because that's what your brain has deemed normal. So the work I do with clients from a more teacher capacity is teaching people how to no longer normalize stress. And it's a strict regimen. And it is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It's the hardest thing my partner ever had to do. But if we can perceive the holistic psychologist, who I'm forgetting her name, Dr. Nicole, forgetting her last name, once said something. She said, let's stop calling them mental illnesses and let's start calling them symptoms of trauma. If we can perceive things like anxiety disorders, which I used to have, or fibromyalgia, which my partner used to have, or chronic fatigue syndrome, or PTSD or CPTSD, if we can perceive those instead of strict diagnoses, this is a life sentence, and instead go further back and say, oh, my limbic system is impaired, my brain is traumatized, and I've normalized this. If your brain can learn to be traumatized, it can learn to be untraumatized. We can do that. If you can work from that root cause of everything else then dissipates. I no longer have a generalized anxiety disorder. I no longer have complex PTSD. And it's not like, oh, it's easy, I took a pill. Haha. No, it takes work, and it took a lot of work. And it's work that, like, the thing about healing too is the more you heal, the more the brain retrieves memories. And
Yes.
so as I've continued down this road, yes, I no longer have GAD, I no longer have a depression disorder, I no longer have CPTSD, but guess what? There are other aspects of my life that are becoming apparent of like, oh, that's a trauma response. I have the tools, I can work on these tools. So I'm not just somebody who's like, I did a thing once and then I teach it to people. I'm like, I'm right there with you. I'm right there on the journey with you. I'm learning, I'm growing. Because what's the alternative? It is either I can manage my shit and have temporary moments of relief when my baseline is stress and overwhelm, or I can heal my shit and then have temporary moments of stress because my baseline is contentment and joy. And when you're acting from a space of contentment, when you're acting from a space of relief, well, not relief, of just baseline, what comes then is an awareness of responsiveness. You're no longer in reactivity. You're able to choose and discern. You're able to say, yes, I want to go with that because it feels right, not because you're reacting. How many of our decisions are filtered through fear of what may happen if we don't do it or what may happen if we do it? What we're going to think about it later on, what other people are going to think about it. Everything is so filtered through, like Moana was saying earlier, through constant levels of judgment as opposed through levels of and layers of trust. So that's the journey.
Very nice. So, like with the alchemize your authenticity, one of the things that many of the people in our audience saw on the flyer, how can they be able to be start sessions doing that to help with what you just talked about of using both that neuroscience and those levels of spiritual and other elements that you bring into it to help them through their journey to heal themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, just within the context of working with me, I have a group program. The first day for one-on-one sessions is January 30th. So it's at the end of this month. And I'm doing it differently than other programs that I've seen in that it is a hybrid group coaching program and one-on-one mentorship. So oftentimes you'll find in the world when if you start seeking out coaches, it's usually like you see the coach live in a group setting for 30 minutes every other week, and then the rest of it's recorded videos. It's what in business is called evergreen, which is fine. But for the work I'm specifically offering, it's not something I personally felt comfortable doing. Trauma healing is hard, and getting vulnerable is hard, and there are many times we can talk ourselves out of doing something, especially if we're talking about healing. It's a lens that is known as limbic resistance, because your brain has normalized stress chemicals, and so when you start doing it, just like a person going through a draw, your brain's going to send signals that something is wrong. So being able to tell somebody, hey, I'm here for you, we're going to go on this journey together. It's not going to be easy, but we can try our best with it. There's a level of importance in that. Also, really quick, that link does not work anymore, but I can give you a better link.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea of the coaching program is that everyone does have to have a one-on-one consultation with me first. It's 30 minutes, just so I can see where you're at. And if you are in a place where you're like, yes, I no longer want to continue down the path that my life has been down. So it's a moment of deep reflection. It's a moment where we'll sit together and I'll ask very honestly, how is your life? Are things going well? Is there a trend of things not going well? Can you explore that more? Where do you see your life going 5, 10 years down the road if you continue down the path you're going down now? Is there a part of you that believes there's an alternative? And one of the things that I tell my clients, do you believe you can save yourself? Because no one can save you. And that's really edgy, but it's true, because we all, and I'm sure all of us here in this lovely discussion, we've had those moments where people tried to intervene on our lives and we didn't listen. And we probably hated them for it and resented them for it. And it's not personal, it's just because we were so activated. And it's like, how dare you tell me how to live my life? There has to be a personal accountability to it.
Yep.
So that's what that consultation's for. And then it's 12 weeks. You will meet with me once a week, every week for an hour. And then there's going to be an hour and a half group session, usually on either Sunday or Saturday morning. I'm still working that out with the cohort right now. It's not too late to sign up, so you can feel free to reach out on that link that Moana posted. And once again, the idea for this is a level of personal dedication where you say, my well-being is going to be my number one priority. And it's a commitment you make every day. You're not just going to make it with me in that consultation. You have to make that commitment to yourself every day. And when things are hard and when you feel yourself deviating, reminding yourself that this is your priority. Moana, I believe, remembers I disappeared off the face of the earth for a few years. I like completely disappeared. I wasn't posting on social media. I wasn't doing anything because the alternative was unaliving myself. The alternative was my partner and I divorcing. The alternative was me continuing to cause harm to people I cared about. And so even though I had like a podcast that I loved and I still love, and even though I had the dream career that my Filipino parents really wanted me to have, and even though I had all the things, I was deteriorating. I was miserable. And I'm not saying you have to quit your job. I'm not even saying you have to quit your relationships. But can you take a break from going, I that's around when I stopped my activism work too. Because it's really difficult to say things will get better while actively embedding myself in communities that say things are not okay.
Yep.
And my brain was normalizing that. So that's the kind of discernment, that's kind of level. Now, if you're looking to just start the work on your own, you can really just start with very simply, if you ever had a journaling practice, it's always nice. One thing I often recommend to people is role play. I'm a theater girl. And try to envision for yourself the most ideal version of yourself down the line, or somebody you would like to emulate. We call it archetypal energy. And then kind of script a conversation with that person and really just be very real and let this person be so loving, so compassionate, but also very real with you. So we're not saying they are enabling you. It's not you're writing like, dear best version of Jemarc, I am feeling very guilty about eating fast food every day this week. And then they respond, oh, you do you, honey. It's so great. It's so beautiful. They'd be like, now, bitch, was that the right move? I love you, but are you showing that you love me? You know what I mean? Um, my highest version of myself was actually the character I played in my podcast. Their name is Twilight. They're actually the reason why I learned I was non-binary, because I played a non-binary character. And the essence of this character was they're a bard, for anyone who's familiar with Dungeons and Dragons. And the stereotype for bards is they want to fuck everything. And I didn't want to do that, playing a non-binary character. So instead I said they wanted to friend everybody. And playing a game, yeah, it's D&D. There's violence, there's fighting, and playing a character who, no matter how heinous and how terrible somebody is, they're always trying to see the best in people, was me really playing out my most idealized version of myself. And so I would do these journals. I would just journal like, hey, I'm having a really hard time communicating with my partner, or I'm not feeling seen, or I don't believe in myself. And then having conversations with this character that I was seeking to emulate in my everyday life. I know it sounds silly, but remember that everything starts first and foremost in our minds. And our brains can't tell, a brain and mind is different, but our brains can't tell the difference between fiction and reality. So if you are willing to suspend your disbelief for a moment and believe that you have a fictional character, an archetypal character, a spirit, a whatever in your corner rooting you on, eventually at some point there will come an integration. And you know, I mean, Twilight for me is no different than Jiminy Cricket for Pinocchio. It's just me allowing my inner conscience that speaks prouder and louder and more lovingly to come out more vocally. And oftentimes you'll find that the voice within you that's saying you can't heal, or saying that you're miserable, or that you're trash, or that you're garbage, or that people hate you and you're worthless is surface level fear. Beneath all of that is always love. Because if there wasn't love, why are you still waking up? Why do you still take the time to feed yourself? Why do you still bathe yourself? If there isn't love, why do you still find things that light you up? Whether it's, you know, another season of your favorite anime, or a wonderful comic made by Moana's wonderful team, whatever it may be, if we were truly heinous, if we were truly incapable of anything more in life, then there would be nothing in life that would light us up. Whether it's a pet, or a friend, or a dream, or any of that. That's where your authenticity lies, because it is rooted in something that is indestructible. Love is indestructible. Conditions are not. But oftentimes we misassociate. We say, oh, I am loved because this person loves me. No, you are loved because you are innately loving. Babies don't come out and say, I will only love you if you give me all my favorite video games. That's not how it works.
Yes. Now, of course, kind of going into like your name, the spiritual geek. How important is your culture and geek culture to you, and how do you incorporate it into your work?
Yeah. So spiritual geek title is really just me integrating who I was with who I am and who I'm becoming. Because like when you get into spiritual work, a lot of people in the spiritual community aren't geeky. It's just not a thing. It's not, everyone's like, let's pray to Kali and let's do prostrations, let's do yoga. And like, yeah, and when I say geeky, like you can be a geek for anything, but I mean specifically geeky within the pop culture lens.
Exactly.
It's just, there's a lot of, I think because for a lot of people, when we get into healing, we tend to dump that which were maladaptive behaviors. And so there becomes a lot of shame around enjoying things like pop culture. And so for me, the spiritual geek is like, you know, part of my ability to believe in myself, or my ability to strive for a better tomorrow, or anything straight up came from geekiness. Doctor Who taught me so much about being a good person. Dragon Ball Z taught me so much about overcoming adversity. Legend of Zelda taught me so much about breaking into people's houses and breaking their shit for money. Like, you do what you gotta do, honey. Like,
Don't forget about the power of friendship too. Power of
power of
friendship.
friendship. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yu-Gi-Oh taught me the power of bullshit card rules. Like, you gotta do what you gotta do. But it's just the concept of spiritual geek, and this is my first time announcing it. I've been in the process. I've written 3 video essays so far. I'm trying to write 10 out the gate and then releasing 5 when the channel launches. And I've been speaking of like believing in yourself and taking time. This is something I've been telling myself I'm gonna do for about 2 years now, and I'm finally doing it because I had to get over some of my, I had to talk to Twilight, and Twilight had to be like, "You got this, bitch." I'm like, "All right, thank you, Twilight." And, um, I am creating a YouTube channel, and this is through which I am teaching wellness and healing through the lens of pop culture.
Oh, nice.
So, for example, I just did one. I just wrote a video essay about how you can learn how to live more authentically through the lens of Netflix's Wednesday, or how you can learn how to free yourself from how to let go of anger and rage through the lens of God of War, and how perpetuating that may not be the healthiest way to live. And it's really just me being like, because in the world we live in today, people, generally speaking, the late millennial and the upcoming Wednesday's dope. The
Yes, it
late
is.
millennial and the upcoming Generation Z, people are becoming very disenfranchised by religion and
Yes.
organized religion. The deities through which we pray to are Marvel superheroes, our anime protagonists. They're the ones who inspire us. And at the end of the day, from a Buddhist lens, it's all archetypal energy anyway. But it's a
Yes.
question of, are you, and so the spiritual geek lens is really an invitation to
Mhm.
engage more consciously with the world that we live in and with the things that we engage in.
Yes.
Instead of watching TV shows or playing video games to numb ourselves, can we really be present with that experience without it pulling us away from the world we live in?
Mm.
So, put an hour on the clock, play the new God of War, play the new Final Fantasy when it comes out next year, play Elden Ring, but be very present with that. I used to live my life where I'd have a video game on one screen, I'd be listening to a podcast, I'd have a TV show on, I'd be eating. That's not presence. That's not conscious engagement. That's me numbing myself because I'm in so much fucking pain. And
Yeah.
so instead, pace yourselves, really engage with a presence and a loving presence with what you're doing, and then be like, what can I take from this? Like I
Yeah.
said, how can Wednesday teach us how to live more authentically? There's a lot in there. The essay's written, it's great. How can Dragon Ball Z teach me how to keep striving for more? How can My Hero Academia teach me how to be more loving and compassionate?
Yes.
When we do, and then take it to your life. I often tell people I work with in workshops or one-on-one sessions, we're not in the business of intellectualizing our wellness. Because when we do that, like Dana just called me out earlier, you get very good at lying to people. You can
Mm.
intellectualize, you know all the right words, you know all the things to say, but in the middle, you're not okay.
Yeah.
But when you get all of that knowledge, when you integrate it into your body, when you get it into your nervous system, that's when you can thrive. Play a little bit pretend. We used to do it all the time as kids. I want to be a Power Ranger. I want to be Sonic. But how do
Yes.
we apply that to living compassionately? For
Mhm.
anyone here who's a Demon Slayer fan, Tanjiro, I know not a lot of people are a fan, but that is one compassionate kid. In
Yes, it
Buddhism, we would call him a bodhisattva, which is a radical saint.
is.
How do I
Yes.
live more like Tanjiro? How do I see my quote unquote enemies and understand at a deep fundamental level that what made them demons is the pain and suffering they've experienced in their lives?
Yes.
That's engaging consciously. That's living with a spiritual geek lens.
Mhm.
And also, like I said, I have this in my background here, but and then like I'm just a huge geek. Like that's just all it is, honey. Like there it is. There's my clout for the podcast. Like
I love it, love it. Of course, we have to dive into your other project that you have going on. You are the co-founder of the Queer BIPOC Spiritual Retreat uh, that is coming up in June of this year. This queer liberation, as you call it. Uh, how were you inspired to start this spiritual retreat? And what can members of our audience expect when they attend the retreat?
Yes, personal frustration mostly. Being non-binary. First starting with the queer part, being non-binary. In the spiritual community, it's a lot of men's retreats, women's retreats, men's circles, women's circles, men's work.
Yeah.
I'm non-binary, and like a lot of men's circles are tackling a new lens of masculinity that I don't really need that. And then women's retreats, because I am non-binary, but I have facial hair. Women usually aren't comfortable with me being in their spaces, which is fine. But like, call it uterus retreat. I don't know, like, or something. And so I really wanted to create a space for queer folks like me. And you don't have to be non-binary, but just people who don't necessarily fit in those boxes,
Okay.
and offering that invitation. The BIPOC component is the spiritual community is very colonized. It's very whitewashed. You know, um, People who seek out mental health services, about maybe three. I'm getting this number wrong, so forgive me. I believe it was like, of all people who seek out mental health services, 3% are Asian, and like
Mm,
meditation and yoga are innately Asian practices. That's
yeah.
wild to me. And I'm not saying it's white people's fault, like innately, but there's definitely a colonized lens
Yes,
that
it is.
makes it very challenging. And it's colonized lens. That's why like Asian folks don't seek out mental health services in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
because we were colonized to believe that mental health services are only for you if you're dangerous, or people will gossip, and like, people already don't treat you well for being Asian. If you get mental health services, you're gonna have even more further trouble getting it.
Yes.
Meanwhile, white people are easily getting these services, are easily
Yes.
getting these resources. So the person I am co-founding and co-facilitating this retreat with, Shaman Poppy. They are a Taino shaman, which is an indigenous
There you go.
South American from DR person. Our hope, our goal is to facilitate a community of queer identifying and BIPOC peoples to really have a kind of intensive 5-day, 6-night experience where they can just be together in community and dive deep and unpack like whatever they have not felt safe to do, because they haven't had a community of people who look like them, who identify similarly to them, who have shared experiences with them. And so queer liberation is going to be in the Poconos Mountains. The paperwork is not signed yet, so I can't say the specific place, but you can join the wait list right there. We're going to make the pricings very accessible. Retreats can usually be anywhere upwards of like $3,000 to $5,000, and we're not
Mhm.
pushing that at all. We're going to keep it, I want to say like 2K and below. I'm still working out the numbers with the venue. So we're going to make it accessible. It's going to be 5 days during the week in June. Where right now the current plan is to get it the week leading up to Juneteenth, and also that's Pride
Nice.
Month, so it's going to be extra spicy. And I'm really excited because it will be wonderful having a space founded by queer BIPOC practitioners, facilitated for queer BIPOC people who want to heal and who are invested and eager and interested in something different, but also something that is theirs by birthright.
Yes.
I mean, spiritual practices, pre-Puritanism, are innately queer. So it's there's a lot of levels and layers to it. And
Exactly.
yeah, you come out, you will meditate. There will be a lecture on plant medicine as a part of it.
Oh,
There's going to
nice.
be a lot of somatic movements. I have a modality that I will be facilitating. It's called the spiritual playground. It's essentially utilizing our brain's inability to discern between fiction and reality to play characters, to give yourself permission to release emotion, no baggage. My friend Shaman will be teaching the Sah method, which was created and founded by my mentor, Sah D'Simone. It's an incredible somatic activated healing. It combines breathwork, affirmations, meditation, and movement to allow you to physically release stagnant emotions as well. There'll be
Mm,
journaling. If you've never been to a retreat before, there will be crying, but it's very loving and very supportive and very wonderful. There'll also be screaming. And yeah, going to retreat was really the final. puzzle piece for me as part of my healing journey, and I try to go to one at least once a year, if the stars align and finances align, of course. And I recognize I have a lot of privilege in being able to do that. But if you're able to come, you would be very warmly and lovingly welcomed, to be
Yeah.
sure.
And I love that you have that, because that's something we've talked about with Shay, our therapist we have come on once a month. Is with us on the show, we want to break a lot of the stigmas that is on mental health, about going to therapy, about meditation and things, because a lot of the BIPOC culture was tied into, some forms of spiritual guide, meditation and things, and that has been demonized through the years. But
Mhm.
then we see constantly on TV and things like that, a lot of people that are part of the Caucasian, of the white part of the community, they they do their yoga and everything else, but we don't see ourselves there. And this is a great way of reconnecting to those elements that our ancestors established all those years ago, that was part of us originally. So I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I want to be so clear too. Like, you can become super interested in your own spiritual practice and your own spiritual journey, and it doesn't mean you have to reject everything you are as a human. That's something
Mhm.
very important to me, because oftentimes that happens. And sure, there can be a component of it. When I started my journey, I was like, I need to just drop all the J-markness of everything and just like be really into this work. But you always come back, like any of the great spiritual teachers throughout history, they didn't stay in the cave forever. They came back to society. And so finding ways to integrate, like I said, that's the whole ethos of spiritual geekdom, is just find that integration so that you can continue enjoying what you enjoy, but without it being reactive, without it being running away, without it being numbing, and also without getting way too pissed about things that aren't important.
Yeah.
Like, I have two cats. Their names are Yoda and Kylo Ren.
Ah,
And y'all, Star Wars fans, y'all need, I don't know, you need to smoke some weed or get laid or do some therapy, because y'all get too heated. Like, it's
yes,
not
I
that
do.
deep. It's not that deep, honey. Like, I'm a huge
Yes.
Star Wars fan. My cats are named after characters. And like, I enjoyed The Last Jedi, and somebody's gonna like not want to have anything to do with me because I said that. But like, it's not that deep.
Yes.
Yeah. We can
But
disagree. It's okay. I can like something. You cannot like something.
That's what I'm
egg,
We can still be
saying.
thank
friends.
you. A lot
That's
of
what I'm saying.
people get
There's a
so far from that. It means you either agree with me, or you don't. It's like when it comes to fan fiction or anything fictional. Once again, I'm gonna say fictional. They want to be like that, but it's like
we
the
could we could do a whole other episode on why people do that, because I have a lot to say about it.
yes,
It
we
is
may have to bring you back on that, because
It is
we do
100%
dive
a
into
trauma
that.
response, and I have a lot of tea to spill. Very very compassionate tea too. I know I said that y'all need to smoke weed or get laid, but like, I know why you're doing it, and I understand, and it's okay. Enjoy the last time. Canceled. Okay, good. I'm glad I'm canceled over that and not something real, like, I don't know, being an Andrew Tate stand or something. That would have been bad, but
Yes,
I'm not. Internet, don't you cut that clip and make people think I'm an Andrew Tate stand. I am way too queer for that. Okay.
yes, yes. But I think that's always been funny within the geek community and everything, that they'll get so heated on things like that, and it's just like, whether it's you know you know how a movie was done, or the fact DC Comics is flipping their world upside down right now and things like that. But you don't give that same passion when we talk about, hey, your favorite creator is talking negatively about trans people, talking that they should not be here, they are not real people, all this other stuff. That's the stuff you should be fighting for, instead of downplaying someone else, because that is their world, and they're bringing that to, hey, love this person's work, but they're trash, and this is why. And you're like, oh no. But then when you're like, I like The Last Jedi, oh my gosh.
I'm gonna say it for real. Like as a Hufflepuff, right? Like because I figure that's who you're talking about. I loved Harry Potter growing up, and like a part of me, there's still a deep nostalgic connection to that.
Yes.
Also, Rick, like the Animorphs is better, and also Percy Jackson is better. I'm just putting it out there. I gotta say how it is. So they only care about how things make them feel. Yes, and they care about how things make them feel because, and this is, I guess, preview for when you all bring me on one day. There's such an insecurity with how we feel about ourselves. And coming back to what I said earlier about for a lot of us, we've never really been content and happy. We've just had relief from our suffering. So much of our lives are lived through a lens of nostalgia. And so there's never really wow, I'm really happy right now. It's always I was happy then. It's why, we have these sequel movies come out and people said that they're worse than the prequel movies, which from a writing standpoint, I disagree with for a lot of reasons. But you had people who were like for 20 years shitting on Phantom Menace who are suddenly like, wow, The Last Jedi was so much worse than Phantom Menace. I'm like, was it though? But it's this nostalgia lens because everyone is just kind of low-grade miserable. They're like, I was happy then. I was happy then. I was happy then. And when you spend your entire life saying, I was happy then, or I'll be happy when, you're never happy.
Yes.
Right.
And so the over-identification with pop culture, what it's linking to is a false sense of childhood innocence and joy that you never appreciated when you had. Which I know sounds intense, and I'm not saying you were never happy as a kid. You definitely were, but as an adult, like we said, if you have an opinion about me how I was then, you don't really know who I am now. It's exactly like that about ourselves. It's the same thing about ourselves. Our memories about who we were in the past are all hella filtered, and there's no objective truth about any of that. It's all subjective.
Yeah, we're gonna have to bring you back. We're gonna have to do a whole episode on that.
A whole series. Spiritual Geek Corner.
Exactly. But yes, what she said is that was always the quote. They ruined my childhood.
100%. Remember when everyone was up in arms about the all-female Ghostbusters? They ruined my childhood. Guess what? They made a new one. Apparently, it was really good. I haven't.
All right.
But
I just think it's funny because, if you go back and watch some of the things that you loved as a child, like, really? Like, this is
you realize the problematic stuff that was being said, then you're like,
I was like,
Did
my
they
parents
say
let me
that?
watch
I don't
that?
remember
Like,
them saying that.
those messages? It's interesting. Definitely through a filtered lens, for sure.
Very much.
100%.
Yeah. So we definitely have to bring Jemarc back. I think it's going to be like another element. I think Moana needs to be a monthly segment of the Spiritual Geek that we have you come on once a month.
I'd be so honored.
And then we just have you once a month, similar to like what we do with Shay. And it's giving that, like you said, that spiritual guide that, all of that elements that is you, and then put you all into, having these conversations like why people are so protective of that, those movies that were made when we were 5 to 10 years old. And then if they do a sequel or something, they lose their ever loving mind about. It's definitely no in everything. And let's see. JD says the first Ghostbuster is the only great one. Even Ghostbusters 2 was pretty bad. New one was no better / worse than the Melissa McCarthy
Really?
Ghostbuster.
Oh, interesting. Oh, it's good to know. I was gonna watch it just because, who doesn't enjoy Paul Rudd and things?
Yeah, but I think they loved the last one because they brought the original characters back into that one, and I think that's why they like that more than the all-female cast one. And it's just like, but is it really that good? And so, like JD said, it was no better, no worse than the all-female cast one. So
I'm guessing I'm gonna have to watch it and see. I'll watch it and say how it ruined my childhood, I guess.
Okay.
It came out before I was born, but it ruined my childhood anyway.
That's what we should call the episode. How we are going to ruin your child.
Ruining your childhood with the spiritual geek. That's gonna be great for my brand.
But it's one of those that, like you said, we have to take those rose-colored glasses. We talk about that with dating. People have rose-colored glasses on, and then when you take them off, you see the reality of all of it. It's like, yeah, like you said, that aspect of the, nostalgia, the connection to that time that you were happy because you were a kid, you were loving, having this great time. You didn't have to worry about bills. You didn't have to worry about going to a job. You didn't have to worry about paying insurance. It was like you were living your best life, even though you didn't realize you were living your best life.
I'm gonna be real. I feel like my best life was before now, because my current life is pretty great. I feel like my best life was college. Like all I had to do was schoolwork, and all my meals were like good to go, and I had people I could constantly interact with that had no choice but to interact with me. Like that was great. Like no one talks about how much adulthood is avoiding your neighbors. Like it's not like college where like, oh, you have to like meet your roommates and get to know each other. Like adulthood is just like you don't talk to anyone but the 5 people you know. So like I'm just saying.
JD says, I don't care about sensitive geeks. I want to know if the ghosts were offended by the last few movies. It's like, you ruined my afterlife.
Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about the Buddhist concept of pretas. They're called hungry ghosts. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to go there.
Oh, I want to hear about that.
I could give just like hours of Buddhism. Just talk. Like people are gonna come on. Like when are they gonna talk about geeky things? I'm just gonna talk about Buddhism from start to finish.
Oh, great. But yeah, Jemarc, we definitely have to bring you back on. I think this will be a great segment to have with you to bring in the geeky portion, but also the the helping you navigate that trauma and stuff, because so many people have that trauma, whether it's dealing with current times in your childhood, during college, whatever. That way sometimes they just have to. I always tell people, you put it out there for folks and you never know who it's going to reach, and that person, that may be their step to say, yeah, I need to get therapy, I need that help. This helped me realize it.
Well, also, like, I fundamentally believe that the path to saving the world is trauma healing. If we perceive everyone as traumatized and everyone as reactive, like, no wonder why, billionaires aren't putting more funding into the planet, because they're so over-identified with their wealth because they're too insecure to know who they are beyond that, No wonder why Putin is doing what he's doing with Ukraine. No wonder why Trump's doing whatever they're doing. Like, if we can heal trauma and collectively get the cultural zeitgeist, collectively get the consciousness to shift in that direction, the world will still be very interesting. I can say fundamentally, as somebody who's no longer living with a trauma baseline, that my life is still pretty damn interesting and fascinating and wonderful. But we've normalized trauma so much that people are like, that sounds like a boring way to live. No, honey, you've normalized chaos. Like, that's what's happened. But life can still be really splendid and loving and wonderful and interesting without constantly living in a state of heightened fight or flight. So I would be honored. If y'all really want to do that, I would be so honored to come on. Like, let me know.
Definitely. We'll definitely talk after the show so we can make that happen. But of course, everyone, once again, putting it in the comments. This is Jemarc's website. Definitely go to it to definitely learn more about the alchemizing authenticity sessions that they talked about earlier. Also about the queer liberation. If you're interested, get on that waiting list. So as soon as it opens, you can go ahead and get signed up so you can start your journey with that. And then, of course, you can also follow Jemarc both on IG and TikTok. Um, there too. They are on there also, and I'm going to put that into the chat also to find them there. That you can follow them, and then you're probably also under the Spiritual Geek, probably on YouTube. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's youtube.com/spiritualgeek.
Okay.
Yeah, because
So then
that's
that
where I
way, with
actually use the brand.
so this way also, as you heard them talking about the videos connecting geekdom to your trauma healing, you can subscribe and follow them on their YouTube channel to kind of
Oh,
see those different videos also.
there it is. It's at the Spiritual Geek. If you do
Okay.
regular just Spiritual Geek, it'll be some other person's channel, and they haven't posted anything either.
Oh,
But
they took it from you. Oh no,
that's
no,
why I'm the, because I'm
exactly,
the
because
Spiritual Geek.
no one
No
else.
one knows. I'm
Exactly.
trying this thing.
Anybody else is an imitation.
I've noticed a lot of famous people get away with anything by just telling people they're amazing, and then no matter they can't do
This is
wrong. So
so
I'm trying to
true.
do this thing where I just tell, I'm amazing, I'm a genius, so you should
Yes,
follow me, and then I can do no wrong.
exactly. So definitely like, subscribe, and follow Jemarc on their social media platforms and also on YouTube. Of course, also make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the Moana Nui podcast on our platforms. But most of all, the Agents of Geekdom, our new network that we're part of, that we partnered up with other podcasts, that we make Lily a platform. No matter what day of the week, you have somebody to listen to Monday through Sunday through the Agents of Geekdom. Definitely like and subscribe to them on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. We are live on all those platforms with the Agents of Geekdom. Any last words you want to give to the audience, Jemarc, before we get ready to end the session?
Oh my goodness, yes. So this is a mantra that I give all my clients I work with. So this is a gimme for all of you. But it's really important. So try saying this to yourself like 3 times in the morning, and then if you feel bold, 3 times in the evening. And the mantra goes, I'm the only one who can save myself. I choose to save myself. I deserve to be saved.
Mhm.
I'm the only one who can save myself. I choose to save myself. I deserve to be saved. Say that 3 times in the mirror with a smile, even if you don't feel like smiling.
Yes.
Because mirror neurons, the more you do that, the more your brain will start believing it's true. Like I said, no
Yes.
one's coming to save us. I wish. But even if Superman busted through your window and said you can start living better, you ain't gonna fucking listen. You're gonna be like,
Yes.
get the fuck out of my house, Superman.
You'll be calling the police. Excuse me, somebody just broke into my house.
Excuse me, there's this white boy in my house. Get him out. You know what I mean? So like, it takes courage, and know that like the last thing I want to say too, if no one has ever told you this, you are innately good. It doesn't matter what you've done in your life. It doesn't matter what harm you've caused, what harm you've endured. Innately, beneath all of that, you are good. And if you can remember that, if you can trust in that and believe in that, then you can really start doing that work of healing. I almost quoted the Backstreet Boys, which I usually do.
Okay.
I'm very proud of myself.
And of course, according to JD, if you say that 5 times in the mirror, Jemarc will appear behind you and give you affirmations.
Facts. That is true. It's why I'm exhausted all the time.
Exactly.
Doing that, I'll be like, I'm trying to sleep, but I got to do it.
Exactly. Because everybody's on these different time zones and everything. Well, once again, everyone, thank you for tuning into the Moana Nui podcast. If you're watching this on the replay, we thank you for watching us. If you know anyone that can definitely need to hear what we are talking about today, share that link to us on any of our on the platforms so they can hear it, learn how to be able to get connected to Jemarc, because there may, like you said, someone in your circle that needed to hear that and would need that link to Jemarc's website to reach out to set up their sessions, because that was just the thing that they needed to hear that day. So of course, love each other, be nice to each other, and of course, but at the same time, take care of yourself, because there's only one of you.
Yes.
And, any last words from you also?
No, just thanks everybody for tuning in and being a part of our show. It was great to talk with Jemarc, and definitely looking forward to ruining your childhood with all the compassionate tea.
Exactly. So look forward to the announcement of whenever we start the monthly episode with Jemarc on, ruining your childhood.
It's going to be fun.
Moana Nui Podcast. So everyone, thank you again. Have a great evening. Happy New Year to everyone. Once again, this is your new year. So this is your new steps to doing what you need to do to better yourself this year. So whether it's fitness goals, whether it's mental health, whether it's spiritual health, do what you need to do, because you got to take care of yourself before you take care of anyone else. I always like to tell people, you always hear on the airplanes, if you're traveling with someone, you got to put your oxygen mask on first, because you can't take care of them if you don't take care of yourself. So definitely there. She was partial credit for the title. Okay.
You got it,
So make sure you take care of yourself this year, because do those steps. If you can't do everything, just make those steps one step at a time in front of you. So thank you for tuning in to Moana Podcast, Nui Podcast. We'll see you next Thursday. Have a great evening, everyone. All right. And bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if we put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.